Kamala Harris has just unveiled her new agenda for Black men, so I want to highlight two specific steps she would take as president. Number one, business loans. Black Americans are twice as likely to be denied credit by banks, so Harris would provide 1 million fully forgivable loans up to $20,000 to Black entrepreneurs and others. Number two, more jobs without college degrees. Harris would eliminate unnecessary degree requirements and promote pathways for those without college degrees for 500,000 federal jobs. Number three, more Black male teachers. As a former high school English and social studies teacher, I know it's important for young Black males to see Black men in front of the classroom as role models and mentors. Only 1% of public school teachers are Black men. Harris would create pathways for more Black men to become teachers, including apprenticeship programs and loan forgiveness. Number four, healthcare. My uncle, who had sickle cell disease, died last year, and I know several Black men my age who have been recently diagnosed with prostate cancer. And don't get me started on the mental health needs of Black men. We've been traumatized by an unfair criminal justice system and a world that demonizes us instead of understanding us. But Harris would launch a national health equity initiative focused on Black men that addresses sickle cell disease, diabetes, mental health, and prostate cancer. Number five, weed equity. Black men have been disproportionately arrested and incarcerated for marijuana-related charges. Now that cannabis is becoming more socially acceptable and profitable, it's only fair that we benefit from the changing system that hurt us. Harris wants not only to legalize marijuana, but also create opportunities for Black Americans to succeed in this new industry. Number six, ban the box. I have a law degree, and yet when I lived in Harlem, I was still stopped in the street, arrested, and locked up in jail. Harris would work with Congress to require businesses to limit the unnecessary use of criminal arrest histories, convictions, and credit scores in employment decisions. Number seven, mentorship programs. Harris would expand funding for community mentorship programs with a proven track record of helping young Black men succeed. She'll also support programs like My Brother's Keeper. Number eight, support Black farmers. Harris will continue to support Black farmers and ranchers who have been denied access to capital. Number nine, relieve medical debt. My stepfather passed away in April 2020 with a mountain of medical debt. Kamala Harris plans to work with states to relieve medical debt, which is the leading cause of bankruptcy in America and disproportionately hurts Black Americans. And number 10, crypto protection. More than 20% of Black Americans, including me, have owned cryptocurrencies. I lost money in crypto, but high-risk, high-reward crypto markets provide opportunities outside of the existing stock market for many Black men. A Harris administration would protect Black men who invest in these assets. So let me answer a few questions I've already seen from critics. Question one. Why didn't she do this the last 4 years? Because she's not the president. She's the vice president. Trump was actually a president. He did none of these things in his 4 years in office. Question two, but why do some of these policies say Black men and others? Well, because Trump's Supreme Court justices and federal judges keep striking down programs that focus only on Black people. Trump's Supreme Court ended race-specific affirmative action in college admissions. A Trump-appointed federal judge forced the Minority Business Development Agency to help white people. Another Trump-appointed federal judge blocked the Biden-Harris administration from implementing a disaster relief program for Black farmers. Question three, yeah, but why does it feel like Democrats only care about Black women? But the Democratic Party is filled with Black men in positions of power and leadership. The highest-ranking Democrat in the U.S. House of Representatives is Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, who will become the first Black speaker if Democrats win the House in November. The highest-ranking leader in the military is Lloyd Austin, the first Black Secretary of Defense. Two of the three Democratic Black U.S. Senators, Raphael Warnock and Cory Booker, are Black men. The Democratic governor of Maryland, Wes Moore, is a Black man. The mayors of New York City, Chicago, and Atlanta are all Black men in the Democratic Party. And the only Black person ever elected president, Barack Obama, is also a Black man. And question four, but isn't Trump better for Black men? Was he better for Antron McCray, Kevin Richardson, Yusef Salaam, Raymond Santana, and Corey Wise, the exonerated 5 teenagers who went to prison when Trump led a lynch mob against them for a rape they did not commit? Was he better for the Black casino workers who sued him for racial discrimination? Was he better for Colin Kaepernick and the NFL players he attacked for taking a knee? Was he better for Eugene Goodman, the Capitol police officer who had to fend off a mob of angry white men who tried to take over the Capitol on January 6th? Was he better for the Haitian-American Black men in Springfield, Ohio, who were subjected to death threats because of Trump's lies about them eating dogs and cats? Was he better for Marcellus Williams, the Black man who was executed by the state of Missouri last month because Donald Trump's 3 Supreme Court justices refused to agree with the Democratic justices to stop the execution? Was he better for the Black farmers denied relief by his judges? Was he better for the Black men who died while he mismanaged the COVID pandemic? And will he be better for the Black youth who will be harassed by the police when he brings back stop and frisk? Kamala Harris wants to help Black men to build wealth, provide for our families, and lead our communities. Trump wants to use us as political pawns in his angry MAGA campaign. Those are the choices, Black men in America. Choose wisely.
Welcome to Let It Be Known. And The Harris campaign owes Keith Boykins a big check for that one, don't they? I mean, he just broke it down for her, probably better than she and her folks can break it down. You can read Keith Boykins in papers like the Washington Informant and Atlanta Voice. He also does a regular column for those newspapers, several newspapers. This morning, FEMA is, speaking of misinformation, FEMA is, members of FEMA workers are now under attack. They are, some of the employees have received death threats because of the misinformation, which is really terrible. We'll talk about that this morning. Black mental health, Keith Boykins mentioned a little bit of that, but professionals, Black mental health professionals are saying, well, we need some help. They're experiencing burnout, and they tell you why. We have that story and why that is important. And also, speaking of Black families, a new Gallup study has revealed that lower income and urban Black families are more likely to discuss race and racism with their children than other folks. And Ari Lennox has decided, hey, I am not doing this social media anymore. I'm deleting every social media account I have. And it's for her mental health. And she says it's permanent. We're going to talk about that this morning. But first, I want to listen. You got to check this out. I'm going to read this. And you tell me about cognitive decline. You tell me about a cult. What stands out to me is a cult. So I'm going to read this. And it says this. It says a town hall moderated by South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem began with questions from pre-selected attendees for the former president. And Donald Trump offered meandering answers on how he would address housing affordability and help small businesses. But it took a sudden and instant turn after two attendees at this rally became ill and required medical attention. And so Trump, after jokingly asking the crowd whether anybody, quote, anybody else would like to faint, took a different approach. Trump jumps up and says, let's not do any more questions. Let's just listen to my Spotify playlist. He says, who wants to hear questions right now anyway? Now, one time did the chief MAGA ask, well, those folks, okay. But for 39 minutes, Trump danced for 39 minutes. And Kristi Noem just stood with her hands clasped, watching. He played 9 tracks. Now, remember, he's been sued countless times by artists who don't want his music played, want their music played at his rallies. They don't even want to be on his Spotify playlist. Some say they even pay him to take them off his playlist. So he shook hands while these folks were requiring medical attention and waiting for EMS to come through the crowd. He took that opportunity to dance and shake hands with people on stage. He pointed to the crowd and he did his dance. And he swayed. When he wasn't appearing to dance, he was swaying. And some of the songs that he was dancing to. Now, just to show you, again, underscore how really ridiculous this is.
All just wanna have total control. Wanna know what you think.
I mean, it's incredible. But what I found to be extremely interesting is he was dancing to James Brown's "It's a Man's World" and Sinead O'Connor's "Nothing Compares to You." How do you dance to those songs like it's a party? And this guy, while the attendees were fanning the ill, those who were on the ground sick, the other attendees, as Trump swayed, and danced, the other attendees started singing God Bless America. It was like Jim Jones, you're witnessing Jim Jones all over again. Folks, you know, you worry about, based on his rhetoric, you worry about whether or not there's going to be violence if he loses the election. Perhaps the concern should be whether he will hold one of these rallies and literally pass the Kool-Aid like Jim Jones. It's gotten to that point. You have to wonder. Then the doctor arrives, and here's Trump. Trump says, "Doctor, take your time." He says, "We're enjoying the music." And then he says, "Would anybody else like to faint?" He says, "Please raise your hand and let's faint now. Let's do it now." And then he starts talking about his music, his all-time favorite music. He says is Pavarotti singing Ave Maria. The guy has totally, listen, once again, choose who you want to choose. That's not for me to say, we'll never say. But this guy's lost his marbles. And I think if he gets in the White House, it's just going to be Saturday Night Live every single day. They're gonna, and then look, the governor starts doing the dance too a little bit. It's almost like you're mocking someone doing that dance. But it's going to, Saturday Night Live will have something every single day, as if they don't have enough already. And at one point he asked the folks, he said, "No, play YMCA." This guy, what do you say? What do you say about that? And then, of course, then he plays a song called "Rich Men North of Richmond." Rich men north of Richmond, as in Virginia. Perhaps the more upbeat thing he played was "November Rain" by Guns N' Roses. But I mean, look at that. What, you know good and well, if Biden or Obama was doing that, the mainstream media would be in an uproar. I see the comments rolling in on this one. Michelle Madison, YMCA, honky tonk music. Austin chimes in. Trump is at least 2,000 miles south of Beyond Nuts, USA. Good morning, cousin Tommy. He says they also play the A from, no doubt, a first time listen for 99.9% of that audience. Absolutely. And Mike V says the vice president embarrassed him on stage last night at her rally too. I mean, that's not a big feat, is it, anymore?
Thank you very much. Take your time, doctor.
Take your time, doctor. And he stands there like almost frozen. It's like, remember when Michael Jackson did his, it was his Dangerous concert and they broadcast it on HBO and folks around the world watched it. He came on stage and just stood there for like 20 minutes and the crowd just went wild. Trump stood there frozen like that, but I mean, they didn't necessarily go wild. In fact, several reports said that the many started leaving. many in the crowd started leaving. Austin's got jokes this morning. But it is what it is, right? It is what it is. This guy has really, really shown that, hey, I'm an old man, and now I'm gonna act like it. I'm gonna behave the way you expect old men on the decline cognitively will act. Bob Witter said something about his diapers not being changed and stuff like that. So maybe he's, who knows? But nonetheless, that is your typical Trump rally. The typical Trump rally right there. Turning our attention now, there have been threats against the Federal Emergency Management Agency employees responding to Hurricane Helene in North Carolina and Hurricane Milton in Florida. According to a local sheriff in North Carolina, there has been a number of attacks in places like Ashe County and surrounding areas. Phil Howell is the sheriff there, and he says out of an abundance of caution, they have paused their process as they are assessing the threats. Ashe County, of course, is located about 3 hours northeast of Asheville, North Carolina, which was really, really slammed by Hurricane Helene. Sheriff Howell did not specify who made the threats, but we see that there have been some arrests now, and the threats have been pretty consistent since the misinformation has spread, pushed by MAGA folks. This idea that they are giving money to illegal immigrants.
As he and his team distributed water and resources to people in dire need. He was angry to read a report of threats being made against FEMA workers on the ground.
We have groups of people to come in to help us, and there are a small group of people who want to create chaos to keep the help from coming just so they can blame somebody else. I think that's repugnant. It's ridiculous. It's stupid.
As soon as the floodwater receded, rumors started swirling that the relief effort was underfunded, that victims were receiving $750 in aid, and that the government was unfairly seizing land in the flood zone. One unfounded rumor was that a truckload of militia members headed to the region to threaten FEMA workers, but the Rutherford County Sheriff's Office southeast of Asheville said that was not the case. However, the Rutherford County Sheriff's Office did arrest this man, 44-year-old William Parsons of Bostic, North Carolina, accused of threatening FEMA workers at a gas station with a handgun and rifle. Former FEMA Administrator Peter Gaynor.
It's really absurd. And again, you have folks willing to sacrifice lives to win elections, or for their favorite candidate to win an election. And that is just, it's a sad state of affairs. Again, it just shows man has dominated man to his harm. And that is, people just don't care. There's no natural affection whatsoever. Mike V says, if it's politically motivated, I don't see why it's not considered domestic terrorism. 100%, Mike V. 100%. Because if you don't, right, and if you don't see it that way, then you don't see those storming the Capitol on January 6th as criminals either, or as domestic terrorists either, right? So this idea that you're pushing people, and these politicians, and listen, it's not just Trump, it's other politicians. They're pushing these false, intentionally false narratives, and people are getting hurt. People are losing their lives. They're losing their livelihoods. There should be some repercussions for it, some serious repercussions. RNG says 44 years of pure dumbness. He says, I hope he enjoys prison, threatening a federal worker with a weapon. Yep. Because his cult leader, his politicians that he likes, are telling him that they're down there on the ground. You wouldn't have confronted them if they wasn't down there on the ground. Cheryl Brown says they need to get the National Guard ready, putting up fences and armed because he's going to incite violence. Members are going to show they're behind. Cheryl sounds like somebody's mom, right? So they're behind. But it's true. It's absolutely true. But for FEMA, the first of the first responders, right, to when it comes to these disasters, for them to be subjected to this type of behavior and the threats is absolutely preposterous. It should be more of an uproar about that. But because you have politicians pushing it and mainstream media really quiet, relatively quiet about it. I mean, some reports, and these are the local news is reporting this stuff on a regular basis. While Black mental health professionals are critical, folks, recent information has shown that they are significantly more likely to experience burnout than other helping professions, putting both an underrepresented group of practitioners and the people they serve at risk. There's a great story. Lindy in the Washington Informer reported on this story. She did a great job on this story about Black mental health and the mental health professionals and what they are going to. The Washington Informer reported that a national survey conducted by the National Council for Mental Well-Being found a concurrence of feedback from mental health practitioners concerned that they may not be able to meet increasing demands for mental health or substance use treatment and care without the help of much needed public policy changes. They are asking Congress to do something to help. And about 750 behavioral health workers and over 2,000 adults across the country, nearly 2 in 3, 65%, reported that an increase in client caseload they've experienced, and saying more and more people are in need of mental health services. More than 70% reported an increase in client severity since COVID. And you know that COVID really exacerbated the need for mental health professionals. And then over 90%, 93% to be exact, of behavioral health workers said they have experienced burnout. 93%, almost all of them. And then 62% of those report suffering from moderate or severe levels of burnout. So the trauma that folks are experiencing, well, your therapist is also experiencing that trauma. And the mental health workforce is, of course, predominantly white and female. And we're talking about Black clinicians. One mental health professional told the Washington Informer that, quote, racism always makes you think, I don't want anybody to see me as lesser than. So if you are a provider, you want to be culturally intelligent, which means that you understand where that person is coming from in their experience. So you see all this stuff that's weighing on Black mental health professionals. And so collective data is revealing that Black or African-American people make up a small percentage of the mental health workforce in America. Just 4% of psychologists are Black, 2% of psychiatrists, and 22% of social workers, 7% of marriage and family counselors, and 11% of professional counselors are Black. And so this is part of the challenge as well. RNG says, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't conservatives shut down a lot of mental health facilities? I believe it started under Reagan, and it did indeed start around 1985 under Ronald Reagan. So you're absolutely right. So the folks who seek therapy are having a hard time getting therapists. Black folks, a hard time finding therapists who look like them And then their therapists are finding a hard time coping themselves. I tell you, it's a mad. He had James Brown's song on his playlist. It is a mad world. So they definitely need some policy making, some serious policy making, some policies that is going to help to sort of ease the burden a little bit and allow for more people of color to get into that profession. And speaking of race, for many, being Black in America carries meaning, history, and shared experience that Black children learn about, either directly or indirectly as they grow up. So a new survey now out says that Black parents with young children under the age of 7 in the U.S. are teaching or talking to their children more and more about race and racism. There's a new study done from the Equity Research Action Coalition at the University of North Carolina's Frank Porter Graham Child Development Institute. They joined together with Gallup Center on Black Voices, and they found that 59% of parents say they talk with their children about the challenges they may face because of their race, and either often or sometimes. Meanwhile, though, fewer Black parents, 48%, report that they speak with their children about the advantages they may have because of their race. And they're convinced that there are less and less advantages. And so the report goes on to say that, to indicate, I should say, that conversations about race are relatively common in Black families. More than a fifth of Black parents say but more than a fifth say that they've never had conversations with their children about the challenges they may face because of their racial background. 30% say they never discussed the advantages they may have because of it. Because what is the advantages, folks? That this, it's a small window. It's a narrow, this is a broad sheet of paper over here and a very small sheet of paper over here. Being Black in America. The survey goes on to say among Black parents, 70% of those who experience regular discrimination report talking to their young children about the challenges they may encounter in life because of their race. Similarly, 60% of Black parents who report experiencing frequent discrimination say they talk to their children about the advantages they may have in life because of their race, a rate that is 23% or 23 percentage points higher than those who do not report experiencing frequent discrimination. All of this, we talked about reparations and things of that nature. This all dates back or goes back to the transatlantic slave trade, to Reconstruction, to Jim Crow, to the Civil Rights Movement, to why you had the Black Panther movement, to today. So the conversation about race is one that Black families, they have on some level, but this report indicates that the more the struggle, the more it's discussed. And I think that the discussion, and I see what the poll, what the report brings out, but I think that the report does not necessarily do the justice. I think particularly today, just about every working class Black family has that discussion at least at some point with their children. You're almost forced to. I mean, if they go to a mixed school, something is going to come up. Even if they go to a Black school that has white teachers, something's coming up where you're going to talk about race. with your children. And so that's just America, folks. That's just the way. It's not just America, really. It's the world. But you're going to hear about it more, according to this study, with lower income urban Black families. They're going to talk to their children more. So you just think about, from Keith Boykins to Donald Trump to the conversation on mental health and race. I think Keith Boykins really nailed it, didn't he? RNG says the only, and you leave out a word, Power 96, we have as the Black race, we are last hired, first fired, and twice as lucky to be beat or killed for walking while Black, driving while Black, and other horrible stats. It's like we say a lot, we use that word disproportionately. And every time you hear that word, another word in that sentence is going to be Black. That word disproportionately. Because it's so, in just about every case you look at, we are disproportionately affected by something. And going back to the topic of mental health, Ari Lennox has announced that she's deleting all of her social media accounts for good. In a posting on social media, she wrote that I am working on a plan to transition off of social media for good. She says, I don't believe I'll ever mature and be happy as long as I have it. She says she'll be getting rid of her accounts on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. She has a date too, December 18th, the day she celebrates 2 years of being sober. She says the fear of losing brand deals, music sales, will no longer keep me here. She adds that she has a very toxic and codependent relationship with these apps. And good for Ari Lennox. Good for her, because you think about what she said there. Number one, I'll never be able to mature and be happy as long as I have these apps. Now, it takes a very mature person to admit that they will not grow because of something and they're going to cut it out. And so good for her. And then she goes on to say the fear of losing brand deals and music sales, because you have to have social media for these things today. It's a must. It's not like, the 90s and the 80s and beyond, where if you were doing music, you did music, and you may do videos, but you didn't have to worry about this other stuff. You didn't have to push your stuff on social media. Social media is the only way pretty much the only way to sell, right? Today. There you go, Mike V. He's encouraging Ari Lennox to not delete all of the social media apps, to keep one to listen to Let It Be Known. That's exactly right. We're going to have a conversation with Ari, right? But she says, my happiness is worth more to me than using these platforms to promote. She says, I truly believe I can get creative with marketing elsewhere. So it'd be interesting to see where she goes with that then, right? She says, I'm so exhausted with my addiction to the internet and gossip and attention and validation and yearning to be in control and oversharing. And we know that is something that so many do on these platforms, overshare. But she says she's exhausted. And she admits it's an addiction. You see people, she's far, and she knows that she's far from the only one. There are folks who can't put their devices down, who simply can't put them down. That is called an addiction. She says that she tells her fans, she says that I just want to be free and complete. And speaking of Mike V, she is going to keep one app for Let It Be Known, because she says, my fans can find me on YouTube. So that's where she can find Let It Be Known. And she also has arilennox.com. And so she's asking fans also to subscribe to her mailing list so that she can keep them updated on her 2025 album and tour. She has a new single called Smoke, which is going to hit on Friday. So Ari Lennox is looking to take care of her mental health. And not that she's saying that she is saying she has a bit of an addiction here. So she's doing something about it. And she talks about how toxic social media can be. And we listen, who can argue with that, right? Who can argue with that? I really, of the things that she wrote, I mean, there's several things in there that she wrote. She says, my happiness is worth more to me than using these platforms to promote. And that's what folks they have to embrace that. You got to look out for yourself. We talk so much about this mental health and the mental capacity of folks. You have to understand your limitations and not allow yourself or anyone else to push you past those limitations. Cut it off. She cut it off. She's cutting it off. And she says on December 18th, after December 18th, you will not see her on social platforms anymore. You can find her stuff on YouTube. And good for her. Good for Ari Lennox. She says this is a
imagine
departure.
Donald Trump without the force of whiteness. That's just all there is. And when you ask yourself, why would majorities of white people across socioeconomic demographics, across gender lines, across education lines, endorse someone who only had whiteness to offer? And all you come to is tribalism. That's all that's left. The theory.
Interesting stuff from Ta-Nehisi, however you say his name. I don't know how a black man got that name anyway. Wow. Interesting stuff. Folks, it is Tuesday. We are about 2/3 through this week. And Power 96, much to your chagrin, the Mets won last night. And they're coming back to New York, 1-1 against that vaunted Los Angeles Dodgers team. You got to understand, Orangey and everyone else. I mean, the odds were against them from the beginning. This is supposed to be a season in which they punted. They were just going to rebuild and retool. And back in, as you see, the Grand Slam by Mark Vientos, back in May, they had one of the worst records in baseball. They had a player who walked off the mound, a pitcher who walked off the mound, tossed his glove into the stands, proceeded to say he's on the worst team in baseball. And then, of course, they cut him from the team that moment. And Francisco Lindor and JD Martinez held a team meeting back there in May. And then they had a guy who had been in the minor leagues, in and out of the minor leagues and out of baseball for 2 years, Jose Iglesias, act as a spark plug, who created this song called OMG that has, he worked with Pitbull, that has rallied the crowd at Citi Field in New York and rallied the team. And since June the 1st, the team with the best record in all the baseball has been the New York Mets. And they go into the last week of the season needing to go to Atlanta. Then the hurricane hits. They play one game there, and they have to go to Milwaukee to play the Brewers for 3 games and at least win one of those games, or 2 of those games actually, to go back to Atlanta to finish those games interrupted by Hurricane Helene. win there, and then the next day start the playoffs after playing a doubleheader. Defeat the Brewers 2-1 to move on to play the Phillies, who most people thought was going to not only go to the World Series, but win the World Series. They dismantle Bryce Harper and Cal Schwarber and the Phillies. And now it's off to Los Angeles, where after being smoked on Sunday, they come right back on Monday and return the favor, Orangey, as he wants us to know that the Yankees did win last night. They were home against Cleveland. The Knicks won on Sunday, as you see. And I know he hates that. I'm glad Greer's showing OG Anunoby hitting the three-pointer. Oh, because Power 96 hates the Knicks. He hates to see them win. So it's a really good rub it in his face right now. I watched him barbecue over the weekend and watch his football, so he has to endure. Last night at the Garden, the Rangers was winning, and watching the Ranger game with the Mets on the screen, on my screen at my seat, and then Yankees were on the big screen on the other side, and the Garden kept updating folks on what was happening in both those games. New York is quite the place to be right now, except if you're a Jets and Giants fan. It's just horrible. These the Jets continue to. He says the Knicks are comic relief. The Jets are comic relief, is what the Jets are. The Jets continue. They continue to bring in these old Green Bay quarterbacks, thinking that it's going to somehow lead them to the promised land. Brett, Mr. Anti-vaccine, Brett Favre is the one down with the Mississippi situation there, which he's the welfare situation, but Aaron Rodgers is Mr. Anti-vaccine. Here's some comic relief. There you go. There he is. The one and only. That's the Orangey, y'all. That's Power 96. Pumping the iron. See, he hasn't accepted the fact that he is a retired individual who is charging his kids student loan interest, and he's rooting against the Knicks. But there's a look, and check out his show. He's getting a little heated on his show lately. It's uncharacteristic of him to get heated. He's getting a little heated. You got to check him out Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. He said, wait, who is that Mandingo warrior? But folks, check it out. So let's see, the National League Championship Series resumes on Wednesday in New York. And while the Yankees play game 2 tonight against the Cleveland Guardians, well, I'm used to saying the Cleveland Indians. It's like I'm used to saying the Washington Redskins. Now they're the Commanders. The Commanders are not doing bad so far this season either. So DC, you might be a football town again, with reason. With reason. Folks, hit subscribe on our YouTube page. Subscribe to the Orangey Swag Sports as well. And Michelle Madison's Michelle Delicious Delights. Subscribe to those. We do endorse and support them as well. Thank you for subscribing and supporting us too. And we'll see you again tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Let it be.